What's going on, everybody? Just Haley here, and I am back again with another video. Now, today's video is for Koumei. It is my comfy Koumei build. I know that we just put out a Koumei build video not too long ago. That was more for the decrees and synergizing the full kit with the decrees. You can actually still run this build with a similar setup to that. You won't have to change your formas or anything if you did make the other build. But what I will say is that this one will only use 2 umbras. So if you were a little concerned about 3 umbras before, here's some options for you with this build. Now that out of the way, I do think this is one of my favorite builds in the game because it's just so easy to bring into anything, especially Elite Deep Archimedia. There are so many negatives in Elite Deep Archimedia that a lot of frames are worried about, things like negative duration, damage over time effects, maybe not being able to go into your operator, stuff like that can be very difficult. Maybe shutting off your equilibrium could be bad on some frames when you can't pick up health orbs. All of those can be really bad for some frames, but Koumei just doesn't care. And because Koumei can just honey badger through this shit and not care about just about anything, it makes her an incredibly strong frame for Elite Deep Archimedia, or for realistically any mission that's under about 4 hours. You can bring this build and just thrive. Now, I say 4 hours because any time past that, honestly any time past 2 hours, I'm gonna want my decrees, not for scaling issues, but simply for the fun that the decrees offer at that point. You get so much extra benefit, and it's really fun for me to have that little bit of a gambit to see what you get throughout a mission. Helps make those 2 hours pass a little bit more entertaining, a little bit more fun, and a little bit more, I guess, smoothly. All of this said, I know a lot of people think that she needs decrees to scale, she needs to rely on specific decrees, and it's simply not true. Both of the builds I'm showing you guys today are going to be subsuming off her Amajiko, so you're not going to be getting any of the decrees. What we're going to be using instead are Breach Surge and Roar. The gameplay you see on the current video is Roar. I do really love Roar with her. It's going to amplify the status damage, amplify the damage of her 1 and 4. It's also going to make her pets go absolutely crazy, which is really fun too. The other thing that we run is, I said, Breach Surge. Breach Surge doesn't need duration, it doesn't need to really think too much. It's a very, very easy skill to run. It also gives her a little bit of a defensive bonus because she can blind enemies, and that's the one that I would use for most content. Roar is just kind of a fun option on the side, but I'll be showcasing both of them for you. Now, before we get into the build, I've been informed that some people are still under this misguided impression that Koumei is somehow still mid. She's a mid frame. Kou-mid is such a popular phrase by the community that we meme it out a lot on stream. And that's because I'm always taking her to high-end content, Elite Deep Archimedia, top killing, top damaging really, really easily, and she's just a very simple frame. There's never been any real durability concerns until you say the forbidden words, but outside of that, very strong frame. Now, not all frames are going to vibe with all players, but I am here to say that anyone who's saying that she's a mid frame, Kou-mid as it were, an alternative point of view here is a skill issue. Now, of course, I'm kidding. I'm not toxic, I promise. While I do think Koumei is one of the stronger frames in the game, I'm sure it's not a skill issue that they couldn't find ways to make her work. Maybe they fell into the Archon mod trap. You guys have probably heard my rant on that before, but I never thought that Archon mod synergized as well as some people would say with Koumei. While she does a lot of statuses, I don't necessarily think that's all you need when you're looking at those Archon mods. Maybe they forgot to equip their Torrid, and you know, that happens sometimes. Maybe they forgot to equip their Shade, and hopefully the Shade I'm throwing now will compensate for that. In any case, hopefully this build helps, because Comfy Koumei is genuinely one of my favorite builds in the game, and I really do hope you enjoy. Without further ado, let's get right into the build. So this build is set up to be as versatile as possible and really make sure that you have an answer for anything that might come up. If you're running EDA, sometimes you can't proc the equilibrium, so Energize is here for that reason. If you're running something like where you can't pick up health orbs in EDA, Blessing won't be valuable here, but instead you do have your Umbral Vitality for the extra health. Whatever comes along, you're going to have an answer for. Amamori is going to be a great addition to this to make your health tanking even stronger. You're also going to be using Brief Respite for those brief periods of shield gating because you don't need that much more. We have Rolling Guard to clear any statuses that we do get hit with, as well as, again, we are extending the time period that we are immortal whenever we triple proc the 6 on our Amamori cast. All of that ends up synergizing really, really well. We then run adaptation for a little bit of damage reduction per hit that we take. Mostly it lets us ignore a lot of the fodder type enemies, the basic enemies, basic units, for all the impact, puncture, and slash that we do tend to accrue. Outside of that, we do run Prime Sure-Footed. That's just going to be a standard mod. We have it, might as well run it. Prime Flow gives us all of the energy that we need, especially when capitalizing on Energize. And what this means is that we always have energy to cast, to throw out, and just kind of do whatever we want in a mission. It's very strong, it's very fun, and it's very easy to play this frame like that. Now we do stack up a ton of strength here and don't care about duration again. That is because overall, strength ends up being a very, very valuable mod for her. Not only for the roar when we run it, but also for Breach Surge, amplifying your damage. You get more damage out of your 1, you get more damage out of your 4, and you get more health multiplier for your heal on your Amamori. All of that is really good. It's one of the few stats that Koumei scales really well off of. And if you're not building a ton of strength, you are going to see your Amamori makes you significantly less tanky, so keep that in mind. The triple Umbra here also serves the purpose of giving us a ton of strength. We're also getting armor and health that are going to help us be tanky, so we are getting all of the value that we want out of those triple Umbra, but in this case we are only using 2 Umbral Forma. If you haven't heard, Omni Forma are coming to the game. Essentially, you'll be able to use Aura Forma in other slots for Omni Forma polarities. I do recommend once that does happen, use that on the Rolling Guard slot. That'll allow you to rock some more duration in the Roar build. You could also potentially swap off Adaptation for that build and just put Rolling Guard there if you wanted to. That's going to be an option, not necessarily one that I'm going to do because the Roar build isn't necessarily going to be for a lengthy build for me. It's just going to be an option. The other thing to keep in mind is that we are running no range. The reason we're running no range is because honestly, range doesn't do that much for Koumei. Her 4 already has an excessive amount of range. As long as we have 100%, it's going to be 30 meters. We're fine with that. The other thing with range is that the way that her 1 works is a bit counterintuitive to range. The reason for that is because the 1 can cover with threads up to 200% range worth of distance. That means you can either cast the ability twice at 100% range to cover the full amount and not lose any threads on a recast, or if you are at, let's just say, 150% range, the second cast, you will lose 50% of your threads on the second cast for the initial threads that were on that first cast. That's a problem for me. I'd much rather have the ability to double stack my threads in one area or cover multiple areas with threads. I just think it's a way stronger playstyle for the 1, which allows it to serve a ton of utility for things like mirror defense in EDA, or even just in survival, covering enemy spawn points so that you can make sure that they're nice and primed. You can go somewhere else if you want, and then continue to fight in that same corridor that you were at, come back to it. Once they're all primed, they have tons of elements on them, they become really easy to shred. Your pet can also pick that up with contagious bond, stuff like that, and just cause crazy cascades, which you've seen throughout this mission. Works really well with Roar, but it's going to work really well with Breach Surge too, as long as your pet is something decent. Oftentimes I like running the Predacyte for that reason. Even without the full mecha set mods, you're going to have a ton of value out of that. The other thing is the Panzerwelpaphyla, again, a flesh pets are going to be great for the health tanking because of Hunter Recovery, being a great way to keep your health up. Now all of this ends up being a really strong to keep her tankiness up, and her damage just comes from the fact that you are stacking a ton of power strength on top of having crazy modifiers based on her 1 and 4 and then the dice and all that kind of stuff really coming together for that. The shards section for this build should be pretty quick. Run 2 strength shards. These are kind of optional, but I do like them because they are going to up, again, your Amamori, a little bit more healing. The other thing you're upping is your damage. That's always going to feel good too. The 2 equilibrium shards, the purples that I'm using, I like them. Again, they're built here for the ability to just kind of handle anything that comes your way. It's going to be for the ease of use of this build, so you can have a forever excess of energy. Does feel really good. Also gives you the opportunity to run impetus really easily and still keep your energy nice and high. However, if you are married to energize, you could potentially drop those, and you could run either more duration, which is going to feel really good for the Roar build, or more strength, which again, more strength, more damage, gonna feel really good too. Also more healing on your Amamori. The cast speed shard I do think is relatively mandatory because her casts are a little bit long, though I do actually like 1 shard and not 2 because I like a little bit of duration on the 4 as a little bit of a tech. You'll notice that a lot of the times I start to cast the 4 and then I position where my aim is going to be because the targets are selected as you release it, which is a much stronger way to do that than if you just cast it so fast that you just end up missing. There is going to be a bit of a cooldown on her 4 if you do that. Keep that in mind. Now the gameplay is shifted here. This is my Predacyte gameplay. We're also using Breach Surge here. I actually love the Predacyte with her, even when I'm not running the mecha set mods on her kit. I do think it's a very strong effect if you do want to swap the aura out instead of running Brief Respite. Brief Respite's just there for, again, those little brief bits of shield gating, but you don't always need to run that if you don't want to. It's just another option. If you wanted to run an Augur mod for a little bit of that shield gating, you're not really using it for actual shield gating. It's just those little tiny bits of not taking damage, which are always going to be nice because essentially you combine that with the Omni 50% chance to not take damage, and the ability to roll and guard. You're just very rarely taking damage at that point, and it's very strong. There's tons of times that I've shown on stream that I've cast my Omni and we've ended up getting the 666, and it will be 10, 12, 15 minutes later before it wears off. There's other times that I just walk into a nullifier and it goes away, but I don't really care that much about it. If you get the immortality on the Omni, it is such a strong effect that being able to preserve it for longer feels really, really good. And that's the main reason that I do like running Rolling Guard, but it's not the only reason. Clearing status effects is always really good. The extra brief periods of not having to think about being able to take damage is really strong too, and it just gives her, again, another answer whenever the question arises of what do I do. Rolling Guard is just another tool in the arsenal that Koumei is bringing to the table for the comfy Koumei build. Now, because we've talked about the Predasite before, I won't focus too much on this, but just so you know what mods I'm using here, we are shifting the claws slightly, just adding in those magnetic claws. I think it's a very strong effect, but we are removing the ability for the healing to happen on the slash effects whenever the Predasite's attacking. Taking away that heal did mean that I wanted to shift the Pharaoh Predasite build as well, just a little bit. In that case, I did decide to drop the armor mod, so we are no longer using the link fiber. Instead, we shifted that to a primed pack leader. It's a very strong effect. It's going to be able to give overguard, and with the Predacytes, I'm mostly using a health tanking melee build anyway, so it ends up just being really easy to run. If you wanted to drop something else, you could potentially maybe drop Tandem Bond. It is going to weaken your Predacyte overall, but you could then run your fiber instead. However, because overguard isn't affected by armor, I just felt it made more sense to run the Tandem Bond, keep that up, and keep the pet's damage going, so you could still get those really fun cascades from time to time. Just have a lot of fun with that. Now, I did mention before, this build genuinely just works with whatever weapons you want to run for, so as far as weapon recommendations, it's a little bit hard to say. Run anything influence, it's going to feel good. Anything melee in general, going to feel good. You could run any beam weapons, they're going to feel fantastic. We don't have to worry about headshots anymore, because no more decrees, so we don't have to worry about that kind of stuff, which just means anything that hits a lot is going to feel really, really solid for her. Heavy attacks don't necessarily feel as great because you don't synergize super well with her passive, so anything that's attacking pretty quickly is going to feel really good. Pick your favorite melee stance, pick your favorite primary weapon, pick your favorite secondary weapon. She's just going to make them do a little bit more than they already did, and that's going to feel really good, especially if you end up synergizing it well with her passive. Keep in mind that you sometimes will want to have a fully kitted out couple of weapons, but if you are looking at something like Elite Deep Archimedia, pick your best weapon that you have an option for, and it becomes a really, really easy mission because Koumei is just going to add a bunch more to it. All of the condition overload type mods, all of the gun condi, the pet condi, all of that kind of stuff synergizes so well with Koumei that just amplifies her damage for all of that stuff through the moon, and it is so, so, so easy to play. That's why I really like her for missions like Elite Deep Archimedia, and really just bringing whatever weapons you want, keeping us versatile and varied kit for her. Now, I'm sure that this build video is going to get disliked by all of those Kou-mid conspiracy theorists, so please remember, if you do like the build, if you do like Koumei, if you do like this content, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. It helps me out a ton. Aside from that, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you enjoy Koumei. If you don't, clearly it's a skill issue. Kidding, I'm kidding, I'm kidding. But please do remember that until next time, I love your faces. Have a wonderful one. Bye.